Hello everyone, and welcome back once again to the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour Series 1. My name is your host, Jason Rutledge. First, a quick shout out to all of you who are listening to the show all across the United States, California, Maryland, that one person in New Hampshire, whoever you are. Also, all across the world, United Kingdom, Australia, thank you all so much for listening. Thanks to all of you who liked our Facebook page or followed our Instagram. We really do appreciate every last one of you. Comment on the post or send us an email anytime, autopilot@smooththrillsradiohour.com. So here we are at episode 3, Salem's Lot and the Slow Creeping Death of Small Town America. Specifically, we're basing this discussion on the 1970s TV movie adaptation of Salem's Lot, but we're also touching on the book and a little bit about Stephen King's works in general. I'm joined in the studio once again by Nathan and Katie, so let's get on with the show. But first, James Mason wants to clear the room a little bit.
You can do nothing against the master. Stop, holy man! Cut the boys through it. Back, holy man, back, shaman, back, priest!
Yeah, you didn't want to do the Three Stooges greeting.
No,
you seemed very heartbroken over
I was a little.
No,
I've gotten over it. It could be heartburn. But.
Something more along the lines of welcome back to the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour, coming to you from the glorious man butt of Old East Dallas. In this episode, Salem's Lot. We're all very excited. I can tell.
Yes.
I'm looking at Nathan. He's excited as all get
I'm
out
pensive.
about this one. Pensive.
Yeah.
It does make you think. Things like, why am I sitting through 3 hours of this all in one go?
The podcast or the...
Either one.
Well, in my case, it was 3 hours of the movie and 17 hours of the book.
Wow.
Yep.
That's dedication.
I did that
there.
all this week because I was like, at least this way, I will have maybe more to add.
Yeah.
Well,
different perspective.
When it was released as a TV movie in 1979, it was spread over 2 nights, November 11th and November 24th. They skipped a week. They had a bye week so everybody could kind of catch their breath.
Yeah.
Take in what they watched.
I don't know if they
Around
did
the
that.
Thanksgiving holiday, so...
Yeah.
It's a peculiar time to choose to do it.
It is. The 70s were a peculiar time just all the way around. It did become immensely popular. It's often cited along with Duel, which came out as a TV movie in the 70s, and The Night Stalker, of course, which is the gold standard of 70s scare movies.
Yeah.
I wish they'd go back to TV movies. Like, I like the split up where it can be longer than a film, but...
Don't wish for these kinds of things.
Yeah.
They really
Have you
drove
seen the
it.
sequel to Thornbirds?
Well, true, and now it wouldn't work anyway with everything just going straight to streaming. You get a whole season at a time, so really we kind of do get TV
yeah, you're
movies.
right. It was an event, and there was an anticipation
look
for
up
it.
Look up the history of the Winds of War, which is really the last time this kind of thing was done. They spread that out over a fall and a spring release because it was 36 hours of this thing. And they really drove the TV movie straight into the ground after that.
Yeah, North and South. Before that, was a long.
Well, it's interesting that TV movies were even separate from television series because it's really kind of the same thing because then you have miniseries and things like that where it is, okay, you only know you're getting this finite amount of episodes. So what is the difference between the TV movie and miniseries anyway?
Yeah. Well, it's just a lot of it was adaptations of novels like Roots and Rich Man, Poor Man.
And this, I mean...
Well, you get this, and this is called a TV movie. But then when The Stand came out, it was called a miniseries.
No, this was a miniseries, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the term that's kind of like lost to the ages.
Right. I was just
especially
curious
when you get the DVD and
yeah.
it's cut together.
Well, they're also kind of stuck with this in that you either do an hour and a half TV movie or you do 3 hours and you're stuck in that hour and a half chunk set. So they were kind of, well, we want to be 2 hours, but we can't. We can't stop there. We have to keep on going and make this 3 hours long, which they may not have wanted to do. Paul Monash, the guy who wrote this thing, was even nominated for an Edgar Allan Poe Award just for attempting to adapt this thing into a 3-hour TV movie. I don't know if he won or not. I'm not sure I didn't look it up.
Just being nominated is kind of awesome because you are taking a larger source material and for the most part did justice to it. It's not like it wasn't railroaded. It was decent for what it was.
ringing endorsement.
I don't. I
Decent
mean,
for what it was.
Well, the bare essentials are covered.
Because there is a lot in the original source material that could be left out. And,
I mean, you could have done
a King novel.
5
Are you
parts
serious?
of it, instead of 2 parts, just to cover everything.
To take that amount and do it in just 3 hours, he did a good job with that.
Yeah, and you get to see Fred Willard in trunks. So,
You do. Silk ones, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. So that's what, an hour right there if you wanted.
I'm sure in the book there was an entire chapter dedicated to the shorts. I haven't read the book in ages.
Nope.
Just listen to it.
Nope.
This is Tobe Hooper got the chance to direct this one. Tobe?
Yes, Toby.
Oh, okay.
It's just Toby.
I've heard it also pronounced Tobe.
Yeah.
And for like the majority of my life, I've always said Tobe Hooper. And then one day they're like, no, it's Toby. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So there's a huge cast in this movie. Elijah Cook Jr. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know why I mentioned him first, but you got to have Elijah Cook Jr. show up. He's
Maltese Falcon, right? Isn't he in that?
No, I don't think so. He was in House on Haunted Hill.
He was in House on Haunted Hill. Thank you very much.
He was in the Maltese Falcon.
Wilmer Cook.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, good for him.
He's also in Blackula.
And Rosemary's Baby.
And Messiah of Evil, if you want his other horror credits.
Messiah of Evil. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You have James Mason, who is great in everything.
Mason.
Who can be threatening with every word he says.
Yeah.
Whether it's good evening or coffee, tea. Like, just attacking you.
Right.
in every way. I'm not so sure David Soul was the best choice for this one, though. I know they wanted to get, your popular hunky 70s blonde guy into there, but
he was definitely in vogue at the time.
He was, but they couldn't have gotten anybody else to do that. He just doesn't really do much.
They also had no chemistry whatsoever.
No. I mean, Eric Estrada would have been a better
casting
choice.
was very off.
I felt.
I mean, what, between him and Bonnie Bedelia? I don't know. I think he's to play the outsider who's coming back kind of thing. I think he's great in it, but I just like him. I think he's underrated.
I think they also really play down that character in the film.
Yeah, that's possible. That's what I was going to ask you, having just gone through it again.
Well, he is kind of a dick for the first half hour of this whole movie.
Yeah.
Like, an
intrusive guy. Just
what do you do? I'm a writer.
Yeah.
What do you write? Books. Like, okay.
Yeah,
good talking to you,
it's
David
just
Soul.
very different in the film.
So, okay, given the era, who would you have thought would have been a better? No?
I'm not. I mean,
anyone?
Eric Estrada.
I also think, in my head personally, having just read it, they casted him too old. I pictured him younger.
Okay.
He does seem to be quite a bit older than Bonnie Bedelia in this movie.
Which there is an age gap in the book because it's very predominant, but he seems a lot older than her.
You didn't get that?
I don't know. I mean, they seem within, she'd been acting far longer than he had.
All the kids those days wore green corduroy jackets.
Oh, man. I'd love to have a green corduroy jacket.
With patches on the elbows?
I don't know.
It was the bee's knees,
Do they ever say how old he's supposed to be?
No.
In either?
No, I don't think so.
They don't. He's been a successful writer for some time.
Right.
We understand
and
that.
even when he visits his teacher, I don't think they even talk about at what point he was in school or any of that.
If he was in school.
Well, he was.
Well, he was in the book. I don't know if they ever really acknowledge that in the film. Because he quit, like, college level school.
Early on, we get our first appearance of the Marsden house, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Marsden. Does it look a hell of a lot like the Psycho house, or is that just me? I thought it was built to have that
definitely
resemblance.
I don't know if it was designed for that or, chosen for that purpose, but it does have that foreboding. I mean, it's a House on Haunted Hill kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And
well,
the
nothing
color
like
tone.
nothing like
even
the house
though
in that movie, but
Psycho is black and white,
Yeah.
the house still has that tonal.
Well, the house in this movie is black and white.
Exactly.
When you first see it. I'm not sure that was an accident. I mean, in every other aspect, the art direction was spot on. So I had to think this was done intentionally to look this way.
yes, I would agree with that, definitely.
Probably to evoke that feeling because, you're used to seeing it a certain way.
Well, one thing we get in this movie, which is something that I think Stephen King and Disney have in common, follow me here. And this was a first, really, for TV movies, was that we get child victims. This was not something that was done. This was a big no-no throughout TV movies until this one. Those are the first victims we get in this thing, are these kids. Victimizing children has been a theme for most of Disney's movies also. I mean, separation of the kids from the parents is an ongoing theme throughout them. And that's what Bambi is about, Dumbo's about, all of them. And I don't know if that's something King picked up on intentionally, or if this is something that I'm just imagining.
Well, he writes children in situations in general, not even necessarily in a violence aspect. He just has a weird way of portraying children in books. And I don't even mean necessarily just them themselves, but like the one scene in It that's always talked about when the book is talked about. And there's even like some weird mentions in the Salem's Lot book, and it's like, you okay? Like, why do you always go this way when writing children? So whether it be violence or anything sexual in nature, things like that, he always portrays children in lights that we normally wouldn't see them in.
So definitely unique in his portrayal.
We'll go with that.
We could say that. You could say that.
Okay. Fair enough.
I just thought it was really strange that, he, not only are the kids the first victims, they're the first recruits, really, because the adults didn't start getting recruited as the Vampire Legion until a little bit later. But he gets the kids first.
Yes, it's the same in the book. I was trying to remember if it was the same in the book.
Specifically, these two irritating little kids.
That's a good
the Glick kids. I have to think that they had to know what they were doing there exactly, and they had to know they were pushing an envelope as far as TV movies goes.
Well, they do it very tastefully in the sense that you don't, other than seeing a body later, you don't see anything happen to them.
It's bloodless. It's absolutely bloodless.
Right.
For, I think, the entire movie. I don't think there's a spot of blood in this thing. Until the antlers thing happens at the end.
Danny Glick? Is that his name? Daniel? When he returns home, there is a smear of blood on his forehead. Okay. But you don't really see... Are you talking about the first kid?
Because I couldn't figure out how the first kid gets abducted in the woods, right?
You don't see or hear anything from him.
But when he shows up again, he's changed into pajamas.
Well, because...
How did he get changed into pajamas?
Remember, is it Stryker?
Did he...
Stryker.
He takes him out of the body bag. Like, in the book, you never see or hear anything from that kid until he shows up at, actually, Mark's window, not his brother's window. And in the movie, or TV movie, they actually show him taking him out of the body bag and things like that. And then he shows up.
So the vampire put him in pajamas.
Well, the helper.
I just really want to know where the pajamas came from, is the thing I'm getting at.
Well, there's even a bit in the book where they talk about finding his clothes and shoes in the basement of the Marston house. And he goes to not the police, but Lawrence about it. And he's like, don't worry about it, because he's not supposed to cause anything for Mr. Stryker.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't remember that. But so it is interesting that you see.
Well, that's what we're getting to. He was Starkers, and they found the
and then they put pajamas.
But
it's interesting that they showed that in the TV movie, because they don't talk about that in the book. There's just his clothes in the basement, and then when he shows up at the window, he's dressed.
I see. If only the TV movie audience back in the 70s had that plot hole filled in for them.
You're welcome.
They weren't as demanding, I suppose.
Haunted for years as I have been.
That's what I was saying, where it's weird the things they chose to put in the TV film and the things to keep out. It's just weird, the little things that it's like, okay.
I hadn't read the book in like 25 years when I first read it in college.
Not missing much.
Really?
I'm not a big fan of his writing. I think he's amazing at story building, and he makes some amazing characters, but his writing style is not my cup of tea at all. And I love the TV movies that are based on his work, but his books are too dense.
Well, is that why there's been so many adaptations? Because everybody looks at these books and thinks, I could have done better with this material.
Well, if you think about it, you have your people who are undying supporters of King.
Right.
Or, I could take it or leave it. You never have somebody or they just don't like it. You don't have the people who are like, it's whatever.
So they're not mortal? I'm sorry, go ahead.
But it's usually one way or the other. You don't have the in-between. But
Right.
I do think he is amazing at creating stories.
Yeah.
I just don't think he could write his way out of a paper bag, which clearly I'm not right because he's made a whole
You've just given him an
career on
idea
it.
for a
And
novel.
to be fair, we
Writing
don't
your
know.
way out of an actual
And I'm
paper
sure
He's
for
actually been in a
episode
circumstance where he's had a
2,
paper
I'm going to
bag
get
around him.
torn into about this. But I'm not a fan of his writing.
Well, that's fair. I mean,
I've
you don't
tried
have
over
to be
the
a fan
years
of everybody, you know.
to read
Yeah.
his stuff, but this is the first thing I've ever started and completed. Because usually by the first couple of chapters, I'm like, I just can't.
Yeah.
And it isn't anything about the story. I just don't like his writing.
So I was a bit of an odd duck. Still am. But, you know, elementary school, I used to read a lot of Stephen King. And that's the last time I read this book. But I don't know. I've not revisited a lot of his stuff since. I don't know if I'd feel the same way about it. But at the time, I loved it. But in a way, everything for me is always movie associated. So it was
Well, and that's what got me into him.
Even though it was the source material for the movie, I was like, I got to read this. And then,
maybe I bit off more than I could chew because in middle school, the first thing I tried to read was The Stand because I watched the
it's a bit
miniseries.
daunting, yeah.
And it
yeah.
was.
Wow.
And it's like I told him off this. I tried to read his stuff and remember that this is set in 1975. But there are things that it's like, it's just too problematic. Like, I know times were different, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want to have to trudge through homophobic slurs or extreme
I've not read
misogyny
that one.
or
Is that...
things like that. So for me, it makes it difficult. And even if I grew up reading his stuff, I didn't grow up in 1975.
Right.
So I still would have had that disconnect in time.
Well, yeah, and even then it was glaring. I remember just being some of the characters in various novels would shock you, but that that was his approach to that character. But yeah, I don't know how I'd feel about it now.
I struggled.
Yeah.
One thing that does come up a lot in his stories, and especially in It most recently, is this notion of the evil place, which is the clip we're going to see now, kind of demonstrates what I'm talking about.
Jason, do you believe a thing can be inherently evil?
I've seen trees that look like tortured spirits.
A house. The Marston house, for instance. Can it be evil in its stone foundations, in its wooden beams, in the glass of its windows, in the plaster of its ceilings? Evil. The man who built that house
Yeah, Joshua Vaughn.
killed his wife and a servant and hanged himself in his bedroom closet. Huey Marston's sister and wife died mysteriously. Rumors of poison, never proved. And then he came here. And the young boys in the area started to disappear.
Well, two of them, to be fair.
They were young.
But this is something that comes up when I say It also, is that the idea partially with that is Pennywise didn't corrupt the town. Pennywise was a product of the corruption of the town that was already there. And you kind of get this impression with Salem's Lot also. It's like the house didn't start this. It was simply a symptom of this.
And that's what I love about his writing is that he does have those overarching like points to the story. And I think that's where his writing does work well, but it just isn't always necessarily cohesive.
Yeah, but the evil place thing is also a theme that I would say David Lynch even touched on in Blue Velvet, which is we have this facade that has been constructed. Everybody knows these terrible things are happening.
Right.
No one will acknowledge it until it becomes far too late and we have to burn the whole place down.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it is a go-to thing that he does quite a bit, I think.
Don't spoil anything. I'm working through his movies
No.
now.
I'm just
Okay,
saying,
I was
in
like,
terms of Stephen King
You've seen-
scenarios.
No, that's fine.
You're familiar enough with King to know what's going to happen.
No,
in
I
some of these
meant
stories.
David Lynch's stuff.
Oh, David Lynch's stuff. But,
So,
well, no, I mean,
but I get what you're saying because it is, especially in horror, it is a common thread of evil exists and sometimes
especially in smaller towns
yeah.
like Salem's Lot, which is very much about the death of small town America as a whole. I was thinking about tying this into the spread of Walmart.
Well, it's true
which was-
though.
Didn't come to Maine until 1991, so I'm not sure how
Right.
that factored into how Salem's Lot was written. But you certainly had the same things that happened. You have this presence that comes into a town and just devours it from the inside out.
And even
Much in
with
the same way
singular
that-
characters in that, like the guy who runs the
We're
movie.
not getting Walmart as a sponsor either, by the way.
No.
I'm more than okay with that.
Damn it.
But even with the character of the man who runs the moving company, like specifically in the book, they talk about him basically having the monopoly on moving and how he has become this millionaire because of it. And it's just he has no competition there. So even within smaller characters, not necessarily the evil characters in the story, it still shows that corruption, for lack of a better word.
Well, they touch on this also in this thing. You have Crockett, our real estate guy, played in a
Sonny Crockett?
See, that's who I was.
glorious pair of red silk pajamas, undershorts by Fred Willard.
That is who
who's-
I was talking
He's
about.
an absolute tool throughout this entire movie. I mean,
And he utilizes that tool and he gets them in trouble.
Which is, they're not who has the affair in the book, which I thought was really interesting.
It's him and the
But
George
he-
DeZunda character? Never mind. Anyway.
but anyway, Fred Willard Crockett is entirely manipulated by money completely throughout this entire thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Well,
He's
not,
dragged in.
that's not
Well, I
all
mean,
he's manipulated
he's who
by.
turns the blind eye in the book when they come to him and say, we found these clothes, and they were the clothes that the kid who's missing was last seen in. He's like, not my problem, because he knows if he causes issues. There's name changes of characters from the book to the film, which I'm glad I did it so close, because I probably wouldn't have caught that.
Something else that came up in that clip that is repeated at least 2 times is Ben Mears starts telling the story of the house, and he makes a specific mention of the whole event, like this guy killed his wife and killed his kids, this other guy killed his wife and kids. He mentions that he had a wife before, but will not say what happened to her.
Right.
So I keep thinking there's a lot of guilt in this guy. Either he actually was responsible for their deaths, or he feels completely responsible for their deaths, and that's why he's compelled to
connected to
come
it.
back. I don't know if they spell that out explicitly. Not, they certainly don't in the movie, but it's very heavily implied that there's something going on there with this guy.
They go into what happened to his wife in the book, but it's never once, like, the people in the town are like, oh, it's a possibility he was involved. But it never says one way or the other if he is the reason the accident happened, because it was a motorcycle accident. In
I
the
would blame
book.
the motorcycle then. in
Yes,
that
They hit a
clearly the
moving
motorcycle
truck
is to blame.
and-
Oh, and a moving truck.
Well, then
to blame
Fred
as well.
Willard.
It wasn't in. Sorry, Jerusalem's Law.
Ah.
I don't think they mention Fred Willard explicitly in the book either.
Well, I don't know why you wouldn't mention him
It's a
explicitly,
different.
period.
It's a different
I don't
name.
understand.
Oh, never mind, it's the actor.
Well, they did
this
change the
episode,
name.
I'm gonna come out.
They did change the name from the book. They
They
actually,
did.
yeah, they were like,
We can't call him Fred Willard. They're going to
no, that would be crazy because then they'll think they're watching This Is Spinal Tap or something, and just even though that hasn't been made yet.
I love Fernwood Tonight.
Yeah,
What's
ooh,
wrong with this
that's
guy?
much more closer to the book as far as era. Yes, and they're like, where's
I thought
Martin
you were
Mull?
about to say that
Yeah.
Fernwood Tonight was much closer in theme to Salem's Lot.
Sure, why not?
Was it? I don't remember it that way. Okay.
Well, this was an offshoot of Fernwood Tonight, the Salem's Lot miniseries. No, not at all. But yeah.
Wow. Okay. What also struck me is how quickly everybody in this movie completely buys into the vampires. No one has a single doubt in their minds at all. I think Ben Mears just goes, dude, it's vampires. And everybody goes, oh, yeah, you're right. It's
I mean,
vampires."
wouldn't
Like
you
that, just
listen
in a
to
snap.
a man who writes books?
He's wearing a green corduroy jacket.
That's-
We need to listen to him.
There
Yeah.
you go. See that?
Sign of
that-
authority. The
yeah.
ascot in The Howling, green corduroy jacket in this.
Yeah.
It shows you
And
know
awesome
your shit.
hair. David Soul had some awesome hair too. So that
It's
kinda-
not Albert Finney here.
No, it's not
It doesn't-
Albert
We've
Finney.
got
hair,
weird
but
running themes.
It doesn't
in
We
move
these.
do.
much.
People have hair in these movies. I've noticed.
Well,
and especially the werewolves.
And so does the
a lot
little
of hair in
Glick, and
those.
so does the little Glick boy when he launches his
Not
attack.
Jiminy. Not Jiminy.
In probably the most famous scene from the entire movie.
Smooth thrills descriptive audio service activated. Blonde boy has woken up to see who is at his window. Who could it be?
Open the window, Mark.
Oh, it's Vampire Boy. What does he want?
Please. Let me in. It's okay, Mark. I'm your friend. He commands it.
Blonde boy backs away from the window. He pulls a toy cross from his silly model set. Blonde boy is approaching the window. It is very suspenseful. I wish you could see this. He shows it to Vampire Boy.
Go away!
Vampire Boy is leaving. He don't want none of that smoke.
It's a little puzzling, but they kind of hint in this movie also that only Catholics can fight vampires.
Well, it is very Catholic heavy with the crucifixes and.
Well, they're more explicit about it. I mean, even I forget which guy says, how can I help? I'm Baptist. Mm-hmm. And then somebody else says something along the lines of, what good would he be in this fight? He's Lutheran.
Well, in the book, they ask Ben if he has a crucifix, and he's like, no, I was raised Baptist. Why would I have that? So some of it is like an adventure just trying to find different crucifixes in Salem's Lot to use to the vampires.
This is fairly new to vampire lore. If you're a Protestant, you have no shot. You're going to get killed by the vampires.
You're done for.
There haven't really been many vampires versus Protestant kind of movies.
I just want a movie called that, Vampire versus Protestant.
Mormons.
Yeah, that's money in the bank right there.
Do Mormons fight vampires? I don't know.
I imagine so. I don't know.
They would. I suppose if it came down to it, they'd have to. But
yeah.
They don't get it. They don't come right out and say it. I just thought that was it's not a deeply religiously themed TV movie, to be sure.
Right. They don't delve into it too much.
I kind of think they had to. They couldn't. I'm not sure that they would want to in this case. They come close, but they never quite cross that line and just come right out and say it.
Well, in that scene, it proves that you just need a cross. It doesn't even have to be a crucifix.
Oh, you can make it out of tongue
And
depressors.
most of you, that is true. Yeah. Most of your religions, in that vein, Christianity, have crosses. It's not necessarily just a crucifix. Like, you could wear a cross around your neck. So I don't know why it was heavily shown as Catholic, because they have crucifixes, like, and rosaries and things like that, but it's mostly in any subsect of Christianity, it has a cross of sorts.
Which you can bless just with some tape and saying a brief prayer over it in case of emergency. Let's say you're in a morgue.
Yeah.
And even
Peter Cushing put two pieces of wood together.
Peter Cushing put two pieces of wood together?
I'm going to assume...
No, two sticks, actually.
A hammer film?
Well, it's in reference to Hammer, but it's actually from another movie.
Oh, okay.
It's from Star Wars.
Alludes to that. No, not at all. But anyway,
if you're going to make references, you have to let us comment on them.
And I thought we were talking about Jean-Claude Van Damme, hence the derailed reference right there.
What?
Or it could have been Burt Lancaster, the train. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, my God.
And we were...
I don't know. Well, I don't...
We were talking about whether or not it was going to be heavy on religion.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
Or they could even delve into that. That's what you were saying. Yeah.
Is it a matter of could, or they wouldn't want to?
I don't think they
would.
I can't imagine the TV studio would be all that eager to dive into
because you're dealing with markets.
True, when you want to make it more accessible and things like that.
And as we said, this aired, the second part of this aired Thanksgiving, pretty much. So I don't know. They dare not go that far. Maybe if there's a remake.
Which there was a remake. Well,
was there?
Rob Lowe. And,
oh, that's why I missed it.
It was, it was on TNT. It was like
again.
2004, maybe? I don't know. But of course, Rob Lowe was in The Stand, so that was his connection to King before. But yeah, I didn't watch it.
2004. Yep. I didn't know that.
$7 you owe me.
Wow.
Remember when you bet me $7?
No, I don't remember that.
Oh, and Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, that's
I should have watched this one instead.
Wow. It is available. You can still seek it out.
I might do that.
So James Mason, who owns the greatest antique store in any small town. If I owned an antique store that looked like this, I think I'd call it Friday the 13th, the series, The Antique Store.
Yes. I love that show. Yeah.
It's quite amazing. He kills throughout this entire movie, and he really didn't need to do this movie. There's no reason why he had.
There was a lot of movies he didn't need to do.
Well,
but he
yeah,
did
that's
them,
true.
To be fair. But this was a higher profile project for him at the time, I think.
What
this
did
was
he?
a big deal.
What had he done just before this? I can't recall.
Right before this?
Well,
Yeah.
one of my favorite movies he did in the 70s is not considered one of his greatest, but the Charles Bronson film Cold Sweat. He's pretty amazing in that. And
He's been in a lot of TV movies.
Yeah.
A lot.
Stop, holy man!
I haven't seen that, but I would think James Mason and Bronson to be an odd matchup.
It is, but it's a good film.
Mandingo.
Directed by Terrence Young. Oh, that's why we don't want to. I don't want to think about.
I just
Mandingo.
like the title.
Cold Sweat.
I don't know if you'd like the movie though.
Mm.
No, James Mason's excellent in this, and of course he gives it quite the weight of credibility that the film needed.
Yeah. It wasn't coming from David Soul.
Although, also Ed Flanders, who doesn't get enough attention. I love him in it. And he brings a great weight to it as well. One of William Peter Blatty's favorite actors to work with in The Ninth Configuration and Exorcist 3.
I need to see Ninth Configuration.
Yeah. But yeah, he's great. I don't know. I love David Soul in this. I feel like I got to defend the guy.
Maybe so. I don't know.
Yeah. Have you not seen Pentathlon with Dolph Lundgren?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll talk later then.
Oh my
He
God.
gives an off-the-rails performance. It's pretty damn good.
Not the restraint he shows here in Salem's Lot.
No. No restraint in that one.
Okay. Well,
No.
we'll look forward to it. So the Marsden house itself, I thought was amazing. It has the most well-lit cellar of any house I've ever seen.
Yeah. With
A
dogs
huge
hanging in
cellar.
antlers and
The inside of the house itself is astonishingly well done.
Yes.
They really went out of their way and blew that one away. It looks fantastic. It's almost another character in the movie. It's a shame we don't get to see the inside of this thing until
More
the
of
last
it. Yeah.
30 minutes or 20 minutes or so of this whole thing.
That might be what you were talking about. We would have liked to have seen those abductions where they take them to the house or anything like that. Earlier in the film, you get a lot more.
It does feel like most of the action in this movie takes place someplace besides where the movie is looking. at any
Yeah,
given
it is a
time.
lot off screen, but that
Yeah.
could be back to
Budget thing? Or
it is a
just
TV
couldn't do
movie,
it?
budget, and the time. Like I know that
Like
there
Morris
were.
Day?
I know
Yes,
that
Morse Day
there
at the time.
were
Yes, that's exactly what she was talking about.
gory movies out and all then, but for
Sure.
a TV movie, I feel like it probably needed to be more reserved. And I could be completely wrong in that, but
Was the Savage Beast all that gory? I don't recall.
No.
No?
Or what was the
I'm trying to think of what
sequel
else
that?
was done in the late 70s on TV scare movies specifically.
More ants,
Yeah.
Tarantula,
bug
the Deadly
movies?
Cargo.
What was the ski lift one? Death on a Ski Lift or
what a
something like that?
nice
I don't
title.
remember. Oh, they all had great titles.
Yeah.
No question
Killdozer.
about it. Killdozer.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine that as a TV movie, but it totally was.
Yes, definitely.
A bit weird.
Part of the 90-minute TV movies.
But since there wasn't ratings for television things then, like there is now with
Oh yeah,
TVMA and things like
right.
that, was that an issue with what they could show in them?
Well, you're talking. Everything had to go through standards and practices.
Right.
With the network, and it's just whatever they were willing to do.
And I feel like that's why we get a lot of off-screen stuff though. Because it is a television. It's not like if this was a movie, I think it would have been like a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It would have probably been different. But being for TV, it needed to be more reserved.
TV was very, very timid then. I mean, the word sex was never mentioned.
Exactly.
You didn't hear the word bitch on TV until Tess came out in its own miniseries, I think in early 80s, if I remember right. It just wasn't something that was done. And so for Salem's Lot to do what it did was pretty damn remarkable, really.
And that is one thing, like, I liked this.
Yeah. The adultery and
But
everything
it was
else.
very, And even with Barlow, I feel like he probably was definitely
Too
different
much?
for the, no, not too much, but different. Like maybe not what you would have normally seen in horror TV movies then.
He was a throwback. He was Nosferatu.
Yeah, but that wasn't a TV movie.
No, and
they didn't have TV back then. Right, 1920.
But
or movies.
You get what I'm saying.
Yes. No, I
and
always...
Tess was 79.
79, so it would have been later this year. Yeah.
So let's talk about Reggie Nalder.
What about Reggie Nalder?
As Barlow.
Uh-huh.
First of all, 1979 was the year of the vampire. There was more adaptations of like Dracula, anything like that.
Was that Frank Langella, the Dracula year? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Love at First Bite was the same year. Thirst was the same year. And then there was a porno film, Dracula Sucks, with Jamie Gillis as Dracula. Reggie Nalder's in that same year.
Oh, no.
And a couple years prior, he was in Zoltan, Hound of Dracula.
So this was a total sideways move for him.
It was a long shot for him to be in a vampire-infused film, yes. Good old Nalder. If he wasn't doing, devil movies, he was doing vampire movies.
Or porno movies.
Yeah. Thankfully.
Sometimes all three.
Not. But there was an R-rated cut of Dracula Sucks, by the way. But anyway.
Who cares?
Right, exactly. That's the cut I saw back in the day.
Didn't Salem's Lot, didn't this get a theatrical release?
It did.
In a different version?
European.
Oh, European. Was it only in Europe?
Yeah, but for the longest time, that was the only version that was available in the States because that was the one that was on home video.
Oh.
And then when, like, early 90s, they put out the 2-tape full presentation and Laserdisc as well. But yeah, for the longest time, you could only get the 2-hour version.
Did they cut it at all in Europe? I'm only curious because I know that they were so stringent on things because of video nasties and all of that.
Well, no, I mean they wouldn't have had really.
I mean it's not graphic, but some of the stuff that they chose to put on that list didn't need to be on it.
Right? Yeah, certainly. There was like stuff that evidently was added, but I honestly to this day I don't know that I've seen the difference in the version is like as far as like
so is the Steelbook from Best Buy the regular
that's
version?
The 3-hour cut but that's what Warner Brothers puts out now and they put it out on DVD. They've not released the theatrical version, although both the DVD and the Blu-ray have the theatrical trailer, which if you look at it says 1980 instead of 1979.
That would make sense considering how late this thing came out in 1979.
Right. Yeah. So that was the market over there because I don't think it maybe later on played in television markets overseas, but it went theatrical.
It's surprising that they even bothered releasing it overseas in a way because I don't know how well a European audience would even relate to something like this. This is something that came up when I read the book in college as a part of a class, and we had a lot of European students also in that class. And we would go into talking about, death of small town America, and we get into ghost towns, and they would just look completely confused.
Which is so funny because they had small townships and things like that there.
They never abandoned any of them, though. The concept of simply burning your town to the ground and walking away just doesn't happen.
True.
Especially in places like Italy. They will stay someplace forever. The idea of a ghost town is a foreign concept.
That is true.
So, well, the other thing, too, is the reason why it would have gone theatrical is that following year was Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, 1980.
Yeah.
So pushed King's stuff
I mean,
more.
Carrie was a huge success prior to that anyway.
They had a lot of nudity, though, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That goes a long way.
But so it makes sense that it would have been out there because that's the explosion of King was really 80, I would think.
80. Firestarter, I think.
Firestarter was 84.
84.
Was Carrie a TV movie or a movie movie?
It was a theatrical.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Because when you mentioned the nudity thing, I was like,
later remade as a
minute.
TV movie. And then remade again as a theatrical.
So Bonnie Bedelia, this is one of the earliest things I think she was in. This is before Heart Like a Wheel, wasn't it?
Yeah, Heart Like a Wheel was 83, but she'd been on Then Came Bronson, the Michael Parks, the pilot movie, which was like 69.
Wow.
And she'd done quite a few movies, a lot of TV stuff up to then, but as far as like prominence, that might be one of her bigger projects.
She's probably one of the best parts of this entire movie. She was clearly destined to do better things.
And you could see where you could kind of fall for her. I mean, she's...
Especially if you're an older gent. Ben Mears' whole relationship with Susan in this TV movie...
I thought you were going to say Sears, because you were going on the...
Sears? Ooh, that's a good one. But I don't quite get where he was in this relationship, because she gets abducted and he makes zero attempt to rescue her at all.
Until the ending.
No, he didn't even try then.
The thing is they really...
I don't remember him looking for her that hard.
Well,
He finds her.
At the very end of the movie.
Because they changed that all completely.
Kind of, yeah, that's true.
Because she found him.
Yeah, she
where
says
in the
that.
book,
I found you.
they specifically go back to kill her. And it makes me mad that one character that's not even in the movie, that's in the book, that I would have loved to have seen his death scene in a movie. And that's where he falls, because the steps were taken away and he falls down into the knives that are through the... Like, I would have liked to have seen that. They kind of recreated it with the one character, but it's not the same.
It's not the same, no. So, but this is the bit where you supposedly...
Let's talk a little bit about how these clips are titled for the listening audience. This one's called Salem's Lot Fuck Susan.
Yeah, this, as far as I can tell, is as close as he got to trying to rescue the new love of his life in Salem's Lot.
What's it been, 2 weeks?
Of course, they brought gas cans with them. Missed the house completely.
This car's really
Wait for
close.
it.
Sorry, Susan.
That's it.
The wind! It's blowing towards town.
Can we also talk about...
That is the rescue attempt to get Susan.
It was a bold attempt.
I also love how he runs off
Perhaps
with a little
the fire
boy.
will scare her out of the house.
And I don't mean it in that way. It's just weird because I even thought about it when I was listening to the book. He just kind of adopts this child and they just go killing vampires.
Vampire hunting. Well, yeah, I mean, why not?
In Mexico.
Well,
no less. But who follows them to Mexico? It's never really clear how many vampires there are. They make it look like only 6 people live in this entire town.
Well, that's because they eliminate all the characters from the book.
All but 2 of them, which are Ben Mears and this kid, are vampires and now in a house on fire. So, who is it? Who trails them to Mexico? Did they piss off some Mexican vampires along the way that we don't know about, and again shown off screen, or?
Yeah, they would be off screen because when he does the holy water sequence, he's like, they're onto us.
So weird.
Yeah.
There's like things that they left out that could have really helped the story.
Yeah.
And then there's things that they put in that I don't understand why, except to show that bad things happen in this town. Like the adulterous relationship. Why did we need that?
Several precious seconds were taken away as we get an explanation of why this guy doesn't like caffeine.
Yeah,
that happened. This is all valuable real estate that could have gone in a totally different direction.
True.
Just didn't. We get a lot of dinner scenes.
Yeah.
Which add nothing really.
No.
Except they got a full belly out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's important.
This is good for sustenance.
But I agree. The whole confronting Crockett and Tubbs over their adultery is just...
Like I said, unless it's to show bad things happen in this town.
There's already vampires.
Well, because and I will say this much.
But no.
It does show that, for instance, you spoke about how the kids were the first victims.
Yeah.
And then the one guy is taken after he's confronted about his adulterous relationship. It shows that they feed on weakness. So when you aren't in the right state of mind, or you're a child or things like that, those tend to be the victims. So it does show you need to be weakened for them to be able to attack you, maybe? Like, I don't know what they're trying to show with any of that. Because all the people who become victims are either...
useless. Well, not useless.
But I mean, you're not wrong, but they're weakened in some way first. So, like, when the boy's mother... becomes a victim, she's so grief-stricken that she just can't even function. Like, it's like they have to be broken down before they can be turned.
No resistance.
Nothing? You got nothing on that?
I mean, it's,
That's the only thing I can think of to show some of these situations. Because like even in the book, you've got the young married couple who got pregnant too soon, and she's so miserable because he's always at work, and then they turn the baby, which the baby is weak, and then she is then in turn abused and raped by her husband because he thinks she killed the baby, and then they're turned because they're grief-stricken and all of that. So it's like just a slow representation of all of this bad thing happening, weaken them for them to be fed on.
But that could also be an infatuation, too.
That could be, too.
Yeah.
I don't imagine vampires would get all that infatuated with Fred Willard. I'm not a knock against Fred Willard.
I don't know.
Well, and they don't ever really
like
talk...
Barlow got to him.
They don't ever really talk about them feeding either. It's just turning people into vampires.
That's true. But they have to. In order to
I mean, you're right in regular vampire lore, but they don't ever really broach that. Because I remember, even with the movie, it's almost like the one son is taken to be fed on, and then the other son is turned. Because that's in turn what causes him to die, is he has the whatever anemia.
Pernicious anemia.
Because he has been bitten, which then is why he turns into a vampire. But then you find out that the other kid has been turned too. But I remember thinking, oh, well, maybe they just took him to feed on him and then returned the other kid to do his work, basically.
It's just too complicated.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like when they open the shop or you go in any environment, there are 0 turnstiles seen. So
what?
So for turning, you would think a town like Salem's Lot would want to have some turnstiles.
You're going to be fun. The sad part is I thought I knew what he was going for, and then I was like, nope, it's just Nathan.
Sorry.
They're not playing any Birds records? No turn.
Oh, wow. Very nice.
None
very
of that?
Nice. No, and it's just, kind of you would think that would be the go-to thing there in Jerusalem's Lot.
But if you look at King's work in general, I'm going to put this back on topic. If you
we were off topic.
Turnstiles. So. Is this the Turnstile podcast?
It might be. By the way, this one's broken.
Whatever sells the most merch. That's it.
If you look at King's work in general, it's always about, like you said earlier, the evil and the weakening of things. Mm-hmm. So like in It, when they leave Derry, they're fine, but when they return to Derry, they start becoming weaker because of everything that's happening there. And then with like Pet Sematary, like I don't want to go into that one just because what I was going to say was a spoiler and I don't necessarily want to go in. I mean, people know, but I also don't want to be that person either. But it always shows that weakening of a character that will in turn allow the bad to happen to them.
Right.
Because if you're strong...
It's a commonality.
Yeah, because if you're headstrong and all of that, you're not going to just be like, oh, please, just let me become a vampire or whatever.
Right.
You're
and
going,
that's not who they're going to go after anyway.
Exactly.
You don't want to victimize those people because they're going to be a tough sell, as they would say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, this brings me back around to the whole Walmart thing. And, well, King was always...
Which I've seen you there lately.
Well, King would always poke fun at institutions. He loved poking fun at institutions throughout his work. I can't imagine that this wasn't on his mind. That this weakening of small town America as a whole was a whole metaphor that they took on in Salem's Lot. Possibly. It kind of makes sense to me.
That's definitely something that would have been...
Well, just small town in general. They're probably easier to weaken anyway because they don't know the trials and tribulations of the big world. I know that sounds so dismissive, but you get what I'm saying. Like people who tend to grow up in smaller towns tend to be more naive, tend to be more inward, so it kind of shows it on that level as well.
Oh, yeah. I could see that. Kind of fear-based. We're never leaving this place.
Right. Stuck in
I mean, it literally takes a vampire infestation for them to leave. I mean, now granted, he came back because he had gotten out.
But doesn't it always...
Only the one kid got out, remember?
Well,
nobody else survives this thing. Out of all this, Ben Mears rescues that one kid.
Well, I take Ben
but he
Mears
had great
as a survivor
taste in,
as well.
Universal Monsters, and he was a cool kid.
They really don't expound upon that as much in the movie as they do in the comic. I mean, the book. I wish there was a Salem's Lot comic.
Well, they took deliberate care to get like the same type of model kits, evidently.
And I liked that. But it's the only nod you get to it. The posters on the wall and things like that. Yeah. Whereas in the book, Mark goes to them going, this is vampires. Like separately from Ben and Jason knowing it's Jason, right?
Yes.
Okay. Knowing it's vampires. Because the teacher even says, well, somebody's well read. Like he acknowledges like, oh, wow, you know your stuff. Because in the book, both of the Glick boys are going to his house to see his Universal Monster stuff. Whereas they have to hide it because they're not allowed to see scary stuff. So they're going to see his train set. And like that's why they're even going to Mark's house, not to rehearse some school play thing.
Yeah.
So I wish they had expounded upon that more in the movie, because he
they're
was a big
repressed.
old monster nerd, and I like that.
Do you think after they set fire to the Marston house, they went back and picked up all his collection from the house? Maybe.
I hope so. At least the house.
Yeah, that's the that's
been the priority?
Something we didn't get to see, because there's a whole like, there's months right in between.
Yeah, because they don't even really say that.
So at least they spent at least half a day.
So
going back and collecting belongings.
So the sequel wasn't Return to Salem's Lot to get all my comics.
Did someone say a Return to Salem's Lot? Larry Cohen plug there?
The poster, the tagline on the poster was they went back for the comics and all that shit.
All that shit.
It would have been a very different movie.
How much do they ever say?
It is a very different movie, just in general.
Do they ever say the time between when they leave and when Susan shows up? Because I think the only timestamp we get in it is this is 2 years before. Because the opening scene is them getting the holy water.
But I could be totally wrong. I want to say it said like a few months later or something. But I mean, I don't know.
Not that I remember. No.
Or you just take it and you're like, oh, okay, this takes place much later.
We start the movie in Mexico and then it flashes back.
And it says 2 years prior.
So he couldn't have been hanging out in Salem's Lot for 2 years. So I would think
that's just it. But I'm thinking he's going from community to community. Ben Mears comes up there.
No, Ben Mears comes back to town, and in a matter of a few hours, the whole place is on fire and they're full of vampires.
Which that is funny because in the book it is probably over the course, I would say, at most a month, where it is very close knit in the movie.
Very. He shows up, he picks up Bonnie Bedelia. 3 days later, the whole place is on fire.
Right.
It's a remarkable turn of events for Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
I think. But hey.
So he's the real fire starter, is what you're trying to say.
Ben Mears is the actual villain of this entire movie. None of this would have happened.
That actually is a good perspective, though, because think about it. He kind of is. He ruins it for everybody.
Well, because if everybody had just become vampires, it would have just been a little vampire town. Because it's never really shown that they're looking to go outside of it.
The Chamber of Commerce is going to put that on the brochures.
Damn that Mears kid coming back and just wrecking the shit.
Come see America's little vampire town.
Yeah.
And I always mess up his name, but...
Straker.
Why do Straker? Always he uses the word, we have chosen to retire here. We have chosen to retire here. Like, and it's like, maybe they just wanted like a little vampire community. Because it didn't really seem like they were gonna go outside of it.
Right. Well, it's like a little,
So they just want to run their little furniture shop, get the tourists to come in, and then that's it.
So I was right from the beginning. Ben Mears is a dick.
Yep.
That's a good enough stopping point for me. How about you guys?
We didn't get to Larry Cohen, man.
That's right. We'll get to Larry Cohen some other time. Oh my God.
That's it. The show is over. Thank you for listening. The Smooth Thrills Radio Hour is a production of Ghostcraft and is recorded live in Dallas, Texas. Please email your questions and comments to autopilot@smooththrillsradiohour.com. Enjoy the rest of your day.